treues Raten, das dir der Väter Ruhm und Tat im Spiegel vor die Augen stellt. Ich fasse dich und fühle schon die vollbare und mir geweihte Jugend. Du bist mein echter Sohn, ich deine Zeuge, die Tugend.
kennt nicht
die Gefahr, die Reich und Helden kränkt. Wer weiß nicht, o Verführerin, dass du vollends und kömmt dich hin, solang es nur den Zeiten denkt, von unserer Götter Schar auf ewig musst verstoßen sein.
will So, good afternoon. If you are a regular here at the Bloomington Bach Cantata Project, you will recognize that compared to most of the pieces we perform, many things here today are different. The text, as I'll tell you about the purpose of this piece, the original venue, all contrast with the works we usually hear. But this piece is musically very close to the repertoire that we're used to in the most important ways. So obviously this is not a liturgical work. This is a piece Johann Sebastian Bach wrote as an homage to the young royal electoral Prince Friedrich. It was performed on September 5th, 1733, the prince's 11th birthday, performed in Leipzig. Clearly meant not just to honor the prince, but to flatter his father, the elector, also the newly ascended elector Friedrich August III. This piece was not performed in Leipzig churches by the church ensemble, but rather was performed by the Collegium Musicum, directed by Johann Sebastian Bach. The Collegium Musicum was a mixed amateur-professional ensemble, performed usually under the auspices of Zimmermann's coffee house. But even this piece was not performed in Zimmermann's usual location. The coffee house moved outdoors during the summer and early fall to a coffee garden just outside the city walls, an emblem of the new leisure culture of Leipzig's prosperous citizens. So this piece was done outdoors. The text was printed and presumably sent to Dresden. No copy of that original print survives, but a reprint does, in the collected volume, one of the collected volumes of poetry by Christian Friedrich Henrici, the poet with whom Bach collaborated often, who went under the pen name Picander. There are, of course, in this piece no chorales and no scriptural text, as you would find in a church cantata. It consists entirely of newly written poetry, meant to be set as alternating recitatives and arias. And this includes, by the way, the opening and closing ensemble arias, so-called aria tutti, arias for the entire ensemble. This piece is not theological, or I guess I should say it's not directly theological, because there are actually quite a lot of Christian theological references in it, but it is not directly theological, rather it's a classicizing drama. The young Prince Friedrich is allegorized as the young Hercules, who makes a famous choice of virtue over pleasure. Sorry, Shannon, good try. Good try. The story is known, of course, as Hercules at the Crossroads. The crossroads are a resonant image even today. Consider Yogi Berra's advice: when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Among the characteristic features of this sort of little drama, it has had classical setting, it has mythological and allegorical characters who sing in their own voices, and a competition between two of those characters. The four voices are, of course, Hercules, pleasure, virtue, and Mercury. The singers of those four roles combine as the chorus, but not in the outer choruses as those characters. The first chorus is labeled the decree of the gods. It's not entirely clear who sings that. And as the next to last movement says, we are to listen to the chorus of the Muses in the last movement, and that, in fact, the singers represent the chorus of the Muses. There's a nice resonance there. The Leipzig Collegium Musicum sometimes styled itself as a Musenchor, a chorus of music. Now, a lot of this is very different from church pieces, but musically this work is almost the same as the compositions we're used to hearing here together. It uses the same kind of ensemble in size and composition, and the same musical types, recitatives and arias. Most importantly, I would say, for our listening, it uses the same aria types, the same kinds of arias, though especially the emotional and expressive character of the arias for the various characters in this drama. And that overlap between the church pieces and the secular work like this in the types of arias they use is for a very clear reason, because both church cantatas and this sort of secular drama draw from the textual and musical conventions of contemporary opera. They each stem from contemporary opera. And this offers a good way to listen to the arias in this work as standard operatic types. Characteristic, recognizable textual and musical features that mark each of the arias as a certain well-known stereotype. So there's an aria each for pleasure and for virtue, and two for Hercules. There's none for Mercury, who is not directly a figure in the drama, but note, of course, that Mercury and the singer of Mercury, or the singer of Mercury anyway, is given a solo role in the final choral aria. And then, of course, we have a duet for Hercules and virtue, and all of these arias with their intervening recitatives are framed by the opening and closing choral arias. Pleasure and virtue's arias are particularly distinctive, and they represent well-known types. Pleasure, who sings the first aria, sings with strings only, very often quite low in their ranges. There's a sustained pitch underneath that runs almost the whole way through the ritornello, 12 measures of it, and lots of notes grouped in two. This is a stereotyped sleep aria in the early 18th century. It goes back to 17th century French opera, especially the music of Lully, and especially a very famous sleep scene from his opera Attis. Another Bach example you might know of a sleep aria, this time in a church cantata, is the aria Schlummert ein ihr Mountain Augen from Cantata 82, many of the same musical features. Note here, of course, that pleasure is apparently suggesting something just a little bit beyond sleep with this sleep aria, but this is the musical type that goes with it. Virtue's aria has a complex, imitative instrumental ritornello, and the voice adopts the virtuosic instrumental material that the instruments play, a typical bravura tenor piece whose poem draws on the metaphor and the image of flight. It would not be out of place for an operatic hero. And in fact, in paintings of Hercules at the crossroads being appealed to by pleasure and virtue, virtue is almost always depicted in military garb, in armor and similar military garb. And so you can see how this kind of bravura aria might well draw on an operatic type of the sort of aria that a military hero might sing in an early 18th century opera. Hercules' second aria is a firm rejection of pleasure. Ich will dich nicht hören, ich will dich nicht wissen. There's a reference in the text, of course, to the infant Hercules' throttling of serpents in his crib. You can look that one up. A lot of these points are discussed in the notes from Marissa and my translation linked here. This is a classic rage aria of rejection, the kind you might find in an opera. It's got vehement syllabic vocal declamation. It's got one violin line that's marked staccato, sharply, all the way through. Now, Hercules' other aria is an echo piece. This type is not quite so common in opera, but it is a type that you do run across echo pieces. Here, the lines in the poem are actually addressed to Echo. Echo is a nymph who can no longer fully speak, but only repeat the last word or words said to her. Now, the librettist has fun with the question by beginning with questions that are all answered no, a question answered no, and then turning to a question that is answered yes. Bach, of course, as you heard, has fun with this too. An echo effect is first of all built into the ritornello that the oboe plays, echoing itself. Then the echo is performed with the text, but complicated because it involves the voice, an echo voice, and the oboe in orders and combinations that it's very hard to predict. You never know where it's coming from. And then, of course, by the wonderful moment in which the very last Ja and Nein are stated by the echo voice that isn't actually echoing anything at all. There's a wonderful detail of the sources that transmit this piece. We have not only the score, but the original performing material. Vocalists, like instrumentalists, perform from parts, that is, pieces of paper with only their musical line written on it. There is one each for soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, for pleasure and for Hercules and for virtue and for Mercury. But there's one more part labeled echo, and it's a kind of sight gag. And although you probably can't read it from here, you can get the idea that all it says is 99999, ya, and that's it. That's the whole part. You can see this happen if you want. Handed to a fifth singer. Thank you, Sophie. The duet for Virtue and Hercules is a classic type, a text based, as you heard, on the Song of Songs, Ich bin deine, du bist meine. It's frankly erotic. It has a duet, instrumental obligato, closely intertwined, and two voices that also intertwine. This aria, perhaps especially for modern listeners, might raise some thorny questions about gender and gender representation in this piece. It's even more complicated than you might think, because pleasure and virtue are each grammatically feminine in German, And those characters refer to each other with female forms. Verführerin, you female person who leads astray, and Zeugerin, mother, right? So they are grammatically feminine, and they refer to each other with the female gender. And in paintings, once again, of this female episode, it's always pleasure and virtue depicted as female characters who are tempting or exhorting the young Hercules. Now, Collegium Musicum performances under Bach at Zimmermann's or in the Coffee Garden could include women singers, and it's possible that some pieces there were done with women. But there's some good reason to think that all the vocal parts in this piece would have been sung by male singers, including probably a voice soprano for Pleasure's role. It's complicated, not only because it's a boy singing a female role, but the soprano range, especially labeled that way, almost always implies female gender, regardless of who is singing. So the Virtue Hercules duet was probably understood as depicting a female-male romance, but I will admit with potential homoerotic overtones, depending on what the particular frame was in Leipzig in 1733. This gets impossibly complicated in modern performance, especially if Hercules is sung by a female alto, as it often is, and Virtue by a male tenor. Then you have a man representing a woman singing a love duet with a woman representing a man. Do not listen to anybody who claims they fully understand the gender because I think they are to a certain extent complicated enough that would be never exactly certain. The framing numbers of this cantata are arias too. Both are dance pieces. The first is a minuet. It even has some pastoral resonance. There's a drone that runs all the way through most of the ritornello, which was a symbol of pastoral music. Maybe that's meant to be part of a kind of Arcadian setting for this piece that's established in the opening aria. The last one is a gavotte by musical meter and construction with a double upbeat, Lust der Völker, Lust der Deine. But it's also got an A-A-B-B structure, a little binary, A repeated, B repeated. It's got instruments, voices, do the same thing. Instruments, voices, A-A-B-B. That's the organization of a typical dance, like a gavotte. And that little refrain of that AABB gavotte alternates with so-called couplets. And a dance that alternates the refrain with couplets is said to be en rondeau. This is a sung and played gavotte en rondeau to end this cantata. A telling feature of this last movement, Lust der Völker, Lust der Deine, is that this music was also used, we're fairly certain, in a now lost secular cantata that Bach had composed for the Prince of Anhalt-Köthen in the job he held before he moved to Leipzig. And there may even have been similar texts, we don't have the text of that piece, we just know the piece existed, might have had a similar text which might explain why a text that was originally composed say, in honor of Leopold goes Lust der Völker, Lust der Deine, Blüher Holder Friedrich, whereas otherwise he's referred to by two syllables, Friedrich, all the way through this. But Blüher Holder Friedrich might come from a retexting of a piece that was originally in honor of Leopold, right? We're not sure, but it's certainly possible. That movement was used not only in that secular cantata for the Prince of Anhalt-Köthen, but also appears as the closing movement of a church cantata, Cantata 8-184, which consists mostly of retexted music from that lost Köthen piece, where this piece goes, Gute Hirte, trost der Deinen, lasst uns nur ein heilsam Wort. Let us pay attention only to your sacred word. And it's got a pastoral topic as well. Gute Hirte addresses God and Jesus as a shepherd. Now there's an important point here. The musical material of liturgical and sacred cantatas is so similar to that of secular pieces that they could, for the most part, be interchanged as long as you had an appropriate text. Now, this is a huge topic, this question of reuse and the relationship of the sacred and the secular. I wrote a whole book about it for general readers. If you want to look up my book, Listening to Bach, I was going to bring a copy to Wave, but bring it. You can find it in the usual places. It's an enormous topic. But I will point out, and any number of you might have noticed this, that this relationship between a liturgical piece and a secular piece that uses the same music plays a role in this piece in particular. You might recognize a lot of the music. In fact, 6 of the 7 concerted numbers were reused by Bach in his Christmas oratorio that he put together and composed 2 years later. And there was actually evidence that he intended to use the 7th as well, but he and his librettist had a change of plan and he wrote a new movement for that. Now, he and his librettist of the Christmas oratorio found context for these arias in the Hercules cantata, an echo aria, a bravura piece, a love duet, and so on, that fit their casting of the Christmas story. Now, I have to say that having brought that up, I want you to forget about it, because the Christmas oratorio, which did not even exist, probably didn't even exist as an idea on Bach's part when he wrote this piece. Probably wasn't even planned. Again, read my book on that question. I want you to forget about it because the Christmas oratorio didn't exist. You have to take this piece on its own terms, not as some kind of rough draft for the Christmas oratorio, right? It's its own piece. And the real miracle is the way they sort of adapted it to fit in the Christmas oratorio. But that's not a good way to listen to Christmas oratorio, in my opinion, either, because almost nobody who liked it would have recognized and remembered that music, certainly not the congregation. So you need to listen to each of those pieces on their own. But the reuse of this music in a couple of ways is a reminder that these kinds of arias, this kind of music, could find a home both in a secular classical drama or in a liturgical piece. Thank you.
Feuer